In this video, I am joined by Citrus George. We are breaking down that fantastic fresh baked video that Dave dropped the other day. Speculation, Rumor City, all about Disneyland Resort. It's a really, really interesting video. We're going to kind of break it down, give you our thoughts on it up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of Orange Grove 55. Like I said, I am joined by the amazing Citrus George, my fellow Italiano.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. Can't you see I'm walking here, huh? George, thank you so much for coming back on the channel as always, brother. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely, and that was pretty good. You had a little jersey there too, little jersey swag.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Disney George. You could also find me on the podcast called A Walk with Walt, and of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
All right, perfect. And since Dre isn't here, I got to be the sound guy. You're officially in. You're officially in. All right, so let's break down this fresh bake video. This is really something. It's actually pretty cool. I really enjoyed this video. Now, I do want to say beforehand, we're gonna go through the video. We're gonna play a little bit, talk about it. Some of the stuff that Dave says we may disagree on. We may not agree with Dave on some of the stuff. I want to make it very clear because a lot of people will sometimes sort of
misinterpret.
Exactly. Misinterpret, misconstrue, like, oh, well, they disagree with Dave. They must not like Dave. We love Dave. We are huge fans of Fresh Baked. I've talked to Dave privately via DM. He's always been a real gentleman, always a cool guy. I'm a fan of his content. So, yeah, it's nothing like that. We're nerds, just like Dave's a nerd. And we're just nerds just talking about nerdy shit, right? That's what nerds do, right? That's what we do. And we may agree and we may not agree, but at the end of the day, we're all friends here. So we love Dave. And I will be linking the video, the original video from Dave, in the description down below. So after this video, make sure you check it out if you haven't. It really is really fascinating stuff. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. This is pretty crazy stuff here. All right, so I'm gonna hit play, and then what we'll do is we'll kind of stop along the way, talk about it, and here and there. So here we go.
Rumors and speculation time, and I think you're gonna dig these. Disneyland Forward. This is gonna get a little more real. New Tomorrowland gets a little more real. How about Tron? Yes. Avatar? Yes, also. I got scoop on all of this and more coming up next. We're gonna start with Disneyland Forward. Now, as of right now, it's nothing more than a website of a dream. Everybody's waiting for the city council to have their vote on Disney's request to change how certain properties that they own are zoned. Change them so that Disney can build something on those properties besides another hotel or another parking lot. Not that they don't want to, given the chance, but Disney would like to build more theme park. But that's where we are right now. City of Anaheim is rumored to be having their vote in the beginning of 2024, late January, early February, or something to that effect. In the meantime, Disney has been conducting grassroots outreach programs across the city of Anaheim in order to gain support from Anaheim residents. I actually went to one of these.
Okay, I just wanted to stop right there. This is interesting that they're doing these, right? These kind of these grassroots, kind of these coffee talk, whatever they call them, community kind of meetings to kind of let like the small business and even the big businesses in the area and the community, the residents kind of know what Disneyland Forward is, right? So Disney is trying to kind of sell this idea to just Anaheim in general, right? The surrounding area. And I think that's a really smart idea because if you remember, George, like when they were trying to do that Eastern Gateway project a few years ago, over Harbor Boulevard, it was very much this attitude of like, we're King Kong, you guys ain't gonna do shit about it. We're gonna do what we want to do. We're Disney, right? Now, while I don't agree with the local businesses sort of complaining, about it. It's a whole other story. I do think this approach is better.
Yes.
I think that you get more flies with honey, right? Is that the saying? I believe something like that, right?
Something like that. More. You attract more bees with honey, or something like that.
Yeah, you guys get the gist, though. I think that doing this kind of tactic where you're sort of like you're not as combative with the local businesses and what have you, it's more of a collaborative process, much smarter, and then I think it ups the chances of this thing getting approved. But what are your thoughts on that? That this new method, this new tactic, George, that Disney is taking with DisneylandForward?
It's a great business approach. I mean, the fact that you can involve the community, you can involve the residencies, because then that shows the Anaheim City Council that it's not just Disney that would want this green lit. It's businesses, it's people. So I think if Disney can get as many people on their side as possible, I think that's the approach. And to start off something of positive, of what Dave was saying, for sure, if they can convince the Anaheim City Council to approve this, more and more I'm seeing that DisneylandForward is going to be green lit. I mean, this is definitely something that is more so going to happen, especially because I just received an email recently about the added on dates for these pop-ups that are going around in the California areas. So, and I think it's kind of, and then they're also doing like a music in the park that's attached to that, which is, I don't want to say bizarre, but it's kind of like out there if you really think of it. But Disney is like really pushing this to just try to get people to say, oh yeah, come listen to music in the park. We're going to have bands. We might have, some maybe beverages or what have you. But you also, in the back of their minds, it's like, okay, psychologically, we're going to throw this pitch at you.
Right. And no, it's smart because you attract people with the food and the music, the festival vibe, and then once they're there, Disney's like, oh, by the way,
hey,
it makes sense.
It worked in the 70s.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And it was at one of these outreach sessions that I asked, is Imagineering really working on DisneylandForward ideas? I was told no, not really, that they're waiting for that city council vote. I have since been advised that Disney Imagineering has, in fact, been working on DisneylandForward stuff, and that they would be ready to start making plans, not necessarily to start building, but to start, submitting or releasing concept art and actual proposed ideas once they get a favorable vote. Ready with what, you ask?
Can you just pause that real quick? So yeah, I just have to just say that I do agree with Dave in that aspect that they could possibly be Penelope Cruz. Hello. Okay.
I'm just getting through the ad while you talk. So when we're ready.
Well, yeah, like that's really gonna have me talk. I'm distracted. It's like okay. No, but anyway, of what Dave is saying, like I can somewhat agree with that notion. But before that they even consider any of these kind of plans, unfortunately, they have to get that Eastern Gateway up and going. Right. Because in order to then free up the space for the parking lots to become free land, they have to create another way to and from where they're going to put the future parking structure, if you will, to get to the main entrance into the Esplanade and what have you. So first and foremost, and I think a lot of people kind of forget about that when you think of DisneylandForward, yes, I want to feel to say, it's going to expand the parks eventually. But in order to get to plan B, you have to go through plan A. And right. That is, for me, the Eastern Gateway, or they may call it something else, right. Not to relive bad memories.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that Eastern Gateway project is really vital to DCA's future because they want to expand into the current busload area, which currently sits right behind like Monsters Incorporated, the attraction. Uh-huh. And that whole Eastern Gateway thing is very much connected to that. that whole area. So they got to get that. I agree with you, George. For the parking situation, for DCA's future, you have to figure that out. And I think they are. We did that video recently where I think they were planning like 3 bridges to go over Harbor Boulevard and connect everything. So that's good. That's good. But we'll see. You know, we'll see how it all shakes out.
Users, prepare to be digitized into the world of Tron.
Awesome. There you go. And when you think about it, it actually makes considerably more sense if you have designs, if you have a wish to build Tron at Disneyland. It makes way more sense to build it in the proposed space for Disneyland Forward than it does in Tomorrowland, which where everybody assumes it would have gone. You can't build Tron in Tomorrowland for a myriad of reasons, but the one that I reference most often is that it simply wouldn't fit. It's too darn big.
Okay, this is where I depart from Dave. I disagree with Dave on this, and I've talked about it many times on the channel, right? And look, a lot of fans they'll look at something, right, and they'll say, okay, well, the version at this other resort is this big, and that version being that big can't fit in our park. Okay, and that may be true. Dave is probably right. That version that they have in Florida probably wouldn't fit as is in California. But as Disney fans, let's use our imaginations a little bit, right? Do we need an exact clone? Does the track layout and everything have to be verbatim? When we got Tower of Terror here at California Adventure, do we get a verbatim clone from the one in Hollywood Studios? No. They adjusted the design for the Hollywood Tower Hotel to fit DCA, right?
Not even Space Mountain. Both Space Mountains are completely different track layouts, different ride vehicles, even actually the scope of the dome itself. Like you could put them side by side and you can definitely tell Disneyland Space Mountain to Walt Disney Worlds.
Oh, absolutely. And so Disney's done this before where they'll clone something, but it's not an identical clone. So what's to say Disney, look, they get rid of Autopia and they get rid of the submarine voyage. Okay, then you have enough room over there to build a Tron style attraction. Now, it might not be the same exact one that they have in Shanghai or Florida. It doesn't have to be. It can be a smaller footprint. All Tron is basically coaster track with some really cool ride vehicles, essentially. I mean, you can change that layout any way you want. So I disagree with Dave. I don't think it's like this impossible thing. Is it easy to do? No, it's not easy to do. Not impossible though. If Disney wants to, they can do it. Now, also remember, I heard because I've been in this community for a very long time. I'm talking AOL dial-up days. Okay, long time. And I would speculate with fans all the time on online and what have you. And I would always hear that Disney can't expand behind the Rivers of America or behind Toontown because there's backstage buildings and stuff that Disney needs. When Disney wanted to, though, they were able to figure it out. Right? With Galaxy's Edge, they got rid of a lot of that backstage area. With Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, they got rid of, I think, a couple of those buildings back there. If Disney wants to do it, they'll readjust things to do it. So this whole idea that like, well, there's things in the way and it's not big and this, that, and the other.
Well, and you could even take Tron, for instance, at Magic Kingdom. It was under speculation that when they decided to announce Tron at the expo, and they showed the first piece of concept art where Tron is right next to Space Mountain, automatically, the fans were speculating, saying the Tomorrowland Speedway is gone. It's done. That's where Tron's going to go. But then when Disney announced and said, nope, the Speedway is staying, we're shortening up the track, and people are like, then where's it going to go? They found a way. They extended out the land, so to speak, beyond the railroad tracks, because they ended up redoing the whole entire railroad to fit Tron in there. So as you said, OG, where Disney can find ways. There are ways. Nothing, if Disney sets their mind to it, the impossible becomes the possible.
Yeah, Disney, they have a lot of creative people, obviously, at that company that can figure it out. If Disney is really hell bent on getting something in that park, they'll figure it out. Like they were hell bent on getting Star Wars in Disneyland, and they worked it out, and they worked it out beautifully. So this whole idea that like we can't fit a coaster in Tomorrowland, because I don't buy that. I think that you can adjust things. And Tomorrowland has a lot of stuff that's so expendable. And Dave's gonna kill me for saying this, but Autopia, dude, it takes up a lot of real estate.
We're gonna get to that. We'll get to that.
But go ahead.
But I was gonna say, and the plus side is that if they do get a kind of a mini version of Tron opposite of Magic Kingdom, just think it'll only take 3 years to build instead of 6.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And you couldn't build Tron in Tomorrowland unless you got rid of some things, plural. But the space.
So that's the thing. What's the problem with that? Like, are people really like mentally married and so attached to the stuff in Tomorrowland? Like, I'm not. I know a lot of Disney fans on Twitter aren't. People I talk to, like, no one cares about Autopia. Again, sorry, Dave, but a lot of people don't care about that ride. The submarine voyage, a lot of people don't care about that either. I mean, a lot of people feel like that's a dated thing, that its time has come. You have stuff like, the Buzz Lightyear ride, even Star Tours at this point. I mean, most of Tomorrowland outside of Space Mountain is expendable. Like, so what if you got to remove stuff? Go ahead, George.
Me personally, I feel like if they were to, I mean, if they do add Tron, I guess you could still kind of keep it as Tomorrowland, but I feel like they should go kind of like that Discovery route. And I think that would kind of go better. And I know that they probably won't carbon copy again what they did in Disneyland Paris, but kind of have like that Jules Verne type of steampunk type of thing. Like, that way it'd be cohesive, that as time goes on, it wouldn't become so outdated.
Right. Exactly.
Set aside for Disneyland Forward is 100% pure. Nothing exists in that space right now except for parking spaces. They can build whatever they want without any sort of limitations. Well, outside of those limitations, like the noise ordinances that we've discussed in previous videos, because of its close proximity to a residential zoned area on the other side of Walnut Avenue. But as it turns out, this is solved quite easily by building the Tron show building parallel with Walnut Avenue, and then the actual track, the outdoor track portion on the Disneyland Drive side of the Simba parking lot. Actually, that's the way you build it, with or without the noise ordinance, but it does solve that problem. So that's my first prediction, that we do wind up getting a Tron attraction here at the Disneyland Resort, and then it winds up as part of Disneyland Forward in the Simba parking lot. That also means that the Tron attraction would become part of DCA, not part of Disneyland. That is if we assume that these spaces set aside for Disneyland Forward are going to be extensions of the existing parks and not a third gate, which I 100% believe to be the case. I feel like it makes significantly more financial sense for Disney to grow the existing parks rather than to create a third gate. That's a whole conversation in and of itself, but it makes more sense financially for Disney to make more space for DCA and Disneyland. Other than this, we don't have any more info on what we might expect for the Disneyland Forward space. Now, my first instinct, though, is that I think I would prefer that they take all of the Simba lot and turn that into one land, Tron Land. Not just the attraction there and then something else, but the entire space dedicated to Tron, which may wind up being necessary anyway, because, as I mentioned, the Tron attraction is enormous.
See,
Dave, I love you. I love you, dude. I do. I really do. But I don't know. That to me just seems so far-fetched.
Well, the problem I have with that idea is I think DCA needs more immersive stuff. And I don't think Tron's really, I don't think that's really stepping it up for DCA. Like, I want to see something in that area, that symbol lot, that's really immersive. Like, I would love to see like a Latin area, like a Coco, or like with these really detailed, highly immersive little Mexican streets. Like, think like basically like DCA's version of like New Orleans, but you're going through Mexico. Things like that, right? With an elaborate Coco dark ride, really level up for DCA in terms of theming. I feel Tron is kind of more of the same. It's an outdoor coaster, exposed track. It's the Incredicoaster essentially with cooler vehicles. I want DCA to do better than that.
Yeah, that's where it seemed far-fetched to me. Like when he said a whole entire land dedicated to Tron.
Right.
I enjoy the Tron light cycle. I really do. Is it the best? No. I am just going to be flat out. And I think even Disney knows that it didn't get the welcome reception that it was supposed to because of Cosmic Rewind. So if you then put a coaster like that into DCA, that is going to take up that whole entire space, and it's like a one and done, and you're just going to devote that whole entire space for Tron, I don't think, especially for California locals, I don't think that's going to go very well. Now, I do love your idea. If they had like a splice between Coco and Kanto, even Aladdin, you have like the Arabian type of Middle East kind of like where you have like all cultures. So you kind of have yourself a little bit of a mini Westcott without it actually being Westcott.
Right.
I think that would be more cohesive, that would fit into DCA than putting in Tron, because as popular as Electronica was when they had it at DCA, and it was like an after night type of block party with a DJ and everything, it still kind of felt out of place to me. Yeah. It didn't fit into DCA.
Yeah, I mean, if you really, really, really wanted to work Tron into DCA, you can make like a Silicon Valley land, I guess, and you can kind of incorporate it into that. I just don't see that happening. So we'll have to see. You know, I mean, this is, and it might happen. Dave might be absolutely right. This might happen. I just don't see it because, number one, I don't think Disney got the return on investment they were looking for in Florida. We haven't really seen a massive bump from Tron. I think Guardians Cosmic Rewind actually brought more people to Florida than Tron did. You know,
absolutely.
So I think if anything, I think maybe they would try to shoehorn or finagle like a Cosmic Rewind style attraction in DCA maybe over Tron, because I just don't think they're happy with what they got over there attendance wise. You know, so
and I think if they were to do that, I don't think they would actually do Cosmic Rewind, only because they would have Mission Breakout because of Guardians. But I do agree that I think if they were to use that same ride system, but just retheme it.
Exactly. You're right on the money.
And I'm not sure how much more else you could fit into that space, at least comfortably, at least something of any kind of significance. I'll ask you. Google Earth says the Simba lot is about 25 acres. We'll call it 18 if we assume that it has to go in one continuous space and where the show building abuts Walnut Avenue. Tron Ride is roughly 6 acres, or about this part of that section of the lot. It's actually roomier than I thought it would be. There's quite a bit more space in the Simba lot than I thought there was. What do you put in that remaining space that is at least somewhat compatible with a Tron Ride? If we're going to assume...
So 25 acres, is that about like 2 Cars Lands?
Oh, I don't know, but I know DCA itself is 75. So that's a significant 25 acres is a significant chunk. Like that's not a small little area. That's like a good chunk of land that you could put a lot in there if you really want to.
I'm trying to think if Cars Land, I can't remember if it's 10 acres or 12. If it's 10, you're looking at like 2 Cars Lands and maybe an Avengers Campus.
Right.
Maybe,
I mean, it's a decent sized little area. And that's why I'm kind of like, do you really want to waste that on an outdoor thing like Tron? I don't know. I'm just not there, Dave. I'm just not there. I'm sorry, brother.
That transitions and theming is still of importance. It's less important as part of DCA, but as Disneyland in general, we do like our...
Oh, Dave. It's not less important at DCA. DCA lives in the shadow of Disneyland. It's in Disneyland's backyard. They have to treat, this is the one thing that Disney is very guilty of, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. DCA is basically Disneyland's sister park. It needs to be held to the same standard as Disneyland. This whole idea that, theme doesn't matter. We can do half rate stuff, second tier, whatever stuff. It's just DCA. No, it's not just DCA. This thing is connected to Disneyland. I want it to be the same quality as Disneyland. It's like if you have a beautiful home, but you're like, well, it's just my front lawn. I mean, who cares? I'll just have like a bunch of crap all over the front lawn. It's just my front lawn. I care more about my house. Well, it's a reflection of your home though, when your front lawn looks like shit. So you have to, DCA needs to be on par with Disneyland. It's the whole notion that it doesn't need to be, and that you can do half-assed stuff at DCA because it's DCA. No. Theme matters at DCA.
Yes. If they want Disney to have that kind of mentality, then you can't come back and snap at Disney and say, oh, well, you're treating DCA like a Six Flags park. Well, we're the ones that are saying, oh, well, just throw it in DCA, treat it like Six Flags. So it's like Disney is like, if they know that we don't care, but we'll still pay the money, they won't put out the money for higher quality.
Yeah.
So we have to hold them to a higher standard to say, yeah, DCA should just be as good as Disneyland. DCA should be just as good as Epcot or Animal Kingdom or hell, even Tokyo Disney. I mean, I know none of the domestic parks are at Tokyo Disney level, but I mean, at least try.
I know. Look, this thing sits feet away from Walt Disney's park. Okay. No, it has to be held to a high standard. This whole notion that like, well, it doesn't matter if DCA. I'm sorry. I completely disagree with that. Like in the biggest way possible.
Are things to make sense? Do you make the whole place a Tron land? Build an end of line club, an arcade, something for kids, an outdoor, spinner ride or something like that? Is that enough for DCA? Is a Tron ride by itself and maybe one small other ride, is that enough to grow DCA? Or do we need to grow DCA even more? Because I feel like DCA does need to grow more.
And here's the thing too, when he brings up growing DCA, I think you need to physically, yes, DCA also needs to grow physically. But I think the problem that DCA has right now is that there's not a whole lot of immersive family dark rides and attractions for the whole family. You have a lot of thrill attractions there already. You have the Incredicoaster, you have Mission Breakout, right? You have these kind of thrilling things. It's a waste to throw Tron in there now. And even, to be honest, even the Cosmic Rewind thing would kind of be a waste too. I think DCA needs more stuff that like everybody in the family can go on and enjoy, right?
I would say, me personally, I would say do like a, as you had mentioned, like an Encanto dark ride, maybe a Coco boat ride, add something, that you could literally take. Because a lot of times, when you look at the guests that are going into DCA, very little time do you see them with young children because there's only so much for them to do. And then you hop back over to Disneyland.
Yeah, you got to get something in there like on par with like a Mickey and Minnie Runaway Railway where just the whole family can go on it, DC needs more of that kind of thing. And Tron doesn't really add any variety to that equation. It just makes more of the same. Another thrill attraction at this park. I don't know. Lots more.
Disneyland, you know what? Disneyland's fine. I feel like Disneyland is just the right size. We don't need any more Disneyland. It's fine. If I had my way, I would let them grow DCA into the Disneyland hotel site across the way. Make that DCA as well. The only problem with that is that you got to get through all that interference, the downtown Disney interference and the hotel interference, the Pixar Place Hotel and the Disneyland Hotel. Those get in the way. It's a long way to go of non-theme park space. So, and actually that may kill that whole idea. And it could be why the initial thoughts, the initial projections were, one side was going to be Disneyland and one side was going to be DCA. And that was because there's no way to connect those two, and you wouldn't build another gate there. Guess what's, oh my gosh, imagine that. If you do put a park on, in Disneyland Forward space on the other side of Disneyland Drive, over there in the Symbol Lot, you got to send all those guests all the way back to the main entrance if they want to go to Disneyland. I mean, that's a problem.
There is
absolutely. Here we go. There we go.
Now that I actually agree with Dave. Me personally, I would love for them to focus more on DCA than Disneyland. Disneyland has enough to withhold itself for quite some time.
Oh, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, Disneyland just got Mickey Minnie Runaway Railway. It got Galaxy's Edge, 14 acres added to that park just, like 3 or 4 years ago now? Mm-hmm. It is time for DCA to get... I mean, Avengers Campus is like a cute little area, whatever. But DCA needs a big, something big, And
it would have been nice if they could have expanded that way where they could have added more to DCA. But to Dave's point, you're running into downtown Disney, you're running into the hotels, and unfortunately, as he had mentioned, you'd have to create another entrance or exit that would have to make people go all the way around just to get to the other side. So if they were to expand more out into Disneyland, that's great. The more the merrier. But I think before they get to that side, they need to focus on DCA first.
DCA needs it way, way more. I completely agree with both of you gentlemen.
No matter what, but it's just that's still a hike. That's a heck of a hike. It makes you wonder if the whole idea of having just one entrance to the park is still feasible. If they do Disneyland Forward, I'll ask you, is that a feasible thing? Can you build Disneyland Forward and still maintain the one entrance philosophy, which I'm a believer of?
I think you can. I mean, these parks, yes, you would be expanding DCA significantly with the acreage, but how big is Epcot? It's like you could fit our entire resort, both parks and downtown Disney, just in Epcot. And from what I understand, Epcot only has one entrance, right?
Two. Has two.
It has two.
Mm-hmm. It has the front entrance where you enter in Future World, or you have an entrance and exit through International Gateway on the World Showcase side.
So maybe he's onto some. Like maybe they should. And DCA actually already has two entrances with the Grand Cali and the front one. Maybe you add one more. I mean, that's an interesting idea.
I think if it would be convenient to the guest, I think if it was something like how Dave had mentioned, if it puts you out of your way where you have to circle around, right. Then they probably wouldn't make it. Now it works for Walt Disney World because it is a resort complex, but when you maybe add that into the equation for Disneyland, where it's more in a residential area and like a local area, that could maybe hinder the experience. But I mean, as I said, but we have to still say it still can be done. We can't discount everything. If Disney puts their minds to it, they can make it happen.
Yep.
I like that there's just one way in to Disneyland and one way in. Well, actually, there's two ways into DCA, but Disneyland. I like that. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. So Tron is going to Disneyland Forward, and it's not going to Tomorrowland. What is? Now, I've said many times that Tomorrowland is actually not that far off from being a great land. It doesn't need a complete makeover. It's quite serviceable just the way it is. It's got a bunch of attractions. It's got a bunch of restaurants. It's one of the busiest places in the parks every single day. You put a PeopleMover back in there, and that's it. You can call it a day.
Keep pause that real quick. I'm sorry. Dave, again, I have to say, I love you, man. I do. I'm a huge fan. We must be walking in two different Tomorrowlands because Disneyland's Tomorrowland, I'm sorry, terrible. Drops the ball. It's outdated. It has an identity crisis. It's not cohesive to anything.
Well, it has an identity crisis. It has a lot of like empty, unused stuff. Like you have a rotting PeopleMover track. You have a lot of stuff that like was just like repurposed, right? Like the Spirit of Halloween stores almost, right? Like Launch Bay and stuff that's just been repurposed now. And like,
it looks very generic.
It's bad. It's really bad. Tomorrowland needs a top to bottom. I mean, not only does Tomorrowland look, I'm going to go like 1,000 times further than where Dave is going with this. Not only do I not think that Tomorrowland is okay right now, I think they should basically bulldoze the entire land except for like Space Mountain, and we get a completely new from the bottom up Tomorrowland. If that means a new layout, all new buildings, something completely different. How many times is Disney going to repaint the 1960s Tomorrowland over and over? We've gone like to 30 different paint schemes. It's time to bulldoze those buildings and give us something new from the ground up. And it's not okay. This land is the weakest part of the entire park. This is the one area that needs it the most,
Mm-hmm. I agree. I really do. And I'm right there with you. Without touching Space Mountain,
right?
Build a theme around Space Mountain where it'll fit in perfectly, but it'll be new. It'll be refreshed. It'll be current. It'll be current, but it won't go outdated within 5 years.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Tomorrowland needs major work. Major work. But this is a fascinating. I love this video from Dave. Here, you know what? Everybody, right now, when you watch this video, smash that like button like OG just did.
There you go.
Said to be looking to take advantage of IPs that are seriously underrepresented in Disney parks today. And I don't think that there is a single IP that Disney owns, certainly not one on the size and scale of Avatar. There isn't there isn't an IP that is less represented in Disney parks, especially at Disneyland, where there is zero representation of Avatar at Disneyland. I think they're so serious about this that I feel like Avatar might be the future of themed entertainment within the Disney company. This is just the beginning. Well, Pandora at Animal Kingdom is the beginning, but if we set that aside, because that's been years since that's been open, today, now that they own Avatar, this could be the beginning of a whole new era of Avatar development, starting right here in Tomorrowland at Disneyland. Disney is going to be getting into the Avatar business in a big way. Now, I did a video on this when that news first broke about Avatar in Tomorrowland, and I dismissed it at the time. I dismissed it initially, but then sort of changed my tone. I feel like Avatar is about nature and about and the environment and being symbiotic with the environment. That doesn't sound like Tomorrowland to me, but coincidentally.
Okay, and this is something that, and then I'll let him finish his point, but like the approach I think you take as Disney for Pandora at Disneyland, and again, Dave, I'm so sorry, brother, but you bulldoze Autopia. Here it comes. You bulldoze Autopia because it's a lot of wasted space on an outdated thing, you know? So you bulldoze that, you reroute the monorail, and you bulldoze the submarine voyage, okay? So now you have a big plot of land there between the submarine voyage area, between the Autopia and the motorboat area. You have enough there now to build a little Pandora.
And the sub lagoon would fit cohesively. You build Pandora around that. You have like a way of water type of thing. Like take out the subs. Don't keep the subs.
Right. But you can keep the lagoon.
Keep the lagoon. Yeah.
You can keep the lagoon, right? You can keep the lagoon. You can add to it. But Avatar, he mentions it's a very like nature-based kind of franchise. And he's right. It's kind of weaved in, though, with the technology. Well, here's the thing with Avatar. And this is why I think that Autopia area is so perfect for Pandora. It kind of cradles Tomorrowland and Fantasyland. And Avatar as a franchise cradles Tomorrow and Fantasy. It's a fantasy thing. It's also very futuristic. It's perfect for that spot. And then you can really build a proper kind of, Avatar thing at Disneyland. And here's the thing too, Bob Iger has consistently compared this Avatar experience we're getting here in Anaheim to the one in Florida and to Galaxy's Edge. This is not going to be a small thing. This is not going to be something they're just going to throw in there. It's going to be a big deal. He keeps pushing it, and he's mentioning it at shareholder meetings. This is significant.
If it was something very small, he would have just said the one and done of what it's going to be, and then it's over with. They would not be playing this over and over again, where it's like, okay, it's going to be just as great as Pandora and Animal Kingdom. Oh, it's going to be to the same hype as Galaxy's Edge, and then leave it at that. They're not going to leave it like that.
No, they would not. And another thing too is a few months ago there were reports. A lot of people were at Disneyland one day and they saw James Cameron at Disneyland. This was like 2 maybe months ago, and I asked a buddy of mine. I said, "What did it look like? Was he there for like his own like family vacation or business?" My friend said it looked like he was there on business. James Cameron does not live in the U.S. from what I understand. He has to. Yes. He's out of country.
Yes.
So why would he's going to fly all the way down here for some cheap ass like thing they're going to throw in there? Like,
and even if he lived in the U.S., knowing James, Jimmy, he doesn't do things small.
No, he does not.
He is not going to want a pop-up shop. No. He wants something big and immersive. And actually, if you even look at Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom, when you look at the land on the outside, you see nature. But when you go into the show building for Flight of Passage, that's the technology. If you see the technology and you look at this and you say, how could this fit in Animal Kingdom? But yet it does. Because you don't think about it. Right. You're immersed in that land. And that's what I feel like could happen if they, as you had mentioned, cradling it between Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, because it is a fantasy style, futuristic, sci-fi type of film.
Yeah.
It blends tremendously.
It's perfect in that spot. Absolutely perfect.
Avatar is also a fantasy world that exists in a planet far away in the future. That sounds a lot like Tomorrowland. They don't have to worry about thematic confusion, which was the issue that I was having. You know, I was thinking only Pandora in Animal Kingdom. How do you put that in Tomorrowland? You don't. But they don't have to worry about thematic confusion. They don't build something Pandora-like. If they build an Avatar experience, which is exactly why I think that they used that term, an Avatar experience that exists right here on Earth, a place where guests can go into a building and see what the world of Pandora is like. A field trip for science class, if you will. You could build sets inside the building, an exhibit that features some of the unique wildlife that you can find on Pandora, build life-size versions of an avatar. Talk about the science behind creating an avatar that exists on Pandora. Or how about an exhibit showing the importance of unobtainium and how it's used here on Earth? I would very much like to know what the heck unobtainium is and why it's so important that we had to go all the way to Pandora to get it. It's actually kind of perfect. It's actually the exact kind of thing that Walt Disney would build if you could. I cannot believe that I'm just saying this now out loud, but this is definitely the kind of thing that Walt would build in Tomorrowland in a building like Innoventions. Only hurdle there is what to do with the DVC Lounge.
Couple things. This is what Disney is trying to get away from with Epcot. Is they had a type of field trip type of learning this and that, and it started out great in the 80s and the early 90s and even a little bit in the early 2000s, but as time moves on, people don't want to be in school on vacation. Even though this is about Pandora, I can't foresee someone making a special trip into Disneyland, into Tomorrowland to walk in a building and learn the history of Pandora. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. It's not. Look, it would be a decent temporary solution for this building. Absolutely. It's a decent idea for a temporary solution. This is not something, though, that you put in there as a permanent thing. And that's your avatar, a thing that we have in Anaheim. It doesn't even really make sense because Bob Iger is consistently comparing this thing to the size and scope of the one in Florida. And a lot of fans seem to be ignoring that. When he talks about this at these shareholder meetings, he's constantly comparing it to these other very, very immersive lands. Bob Iger doesn't say stuff by accident. He's not. No. This guy is very calculated. He's very, very, honestly, in my opinion, brilliant when it comes to public relations and how he speaks and everything. These are not accidents. What's coming. And it's not going to be some exhibit in Launch Bay. I'm sorry.
And I think people are surmising it is because when you stop and you think about it and you look at it and you say, well, yeah, okay, I understand that, but where is it going? Because people cannot let go of the fact that some attractions are on their way out the door. It is what it is.
People get so attached and they get so funny about Disneyland, especially where it's like, that's Holy Land. You can't touch that. Oh, change. Oh my God. You know, look, Walt Disney built these places, or Disneyland, and he came up with Epcot and the Florida project with the idea that these things are constantly changing. Fans, you got to get out of your head that these things are museums. Okay. It's going to evolve. It's going to grow. Disneyland needs to change and grow. You know, things like Autopia, things like the Submarine Lagoon, Launch Bay, whatever. These are things that had their time. It's okay to let go and move on, though, for some newer experiences. Sometimes you have to do that. And I think it's time for that.
Yeah, really I agree. And one last thing, when Dave mentioned about the kinetic energy, that if they were to put like the Pandora over at Animal Kingdom and throw it into Disneyland, it wouldn't be cohesive or in that sense. And I'm actually going to take what you say. Currently, right now, they have a Swiss mountain that is now intertwining with a monorail that's right next to a submarine lagoon, that's then right next to a speedway track. And it's like, you look at that as a whole and you're like, well, where's the cohesive of that? But it works.
It works. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just joking. Of course they get rid of it. When I first saw the concept art for the DVC Lounge, I'm like, that doesn't look permanent. That does not look like the kind of thing that they're proud of and that they want to stick around for decades. That's the kind of thing that could go away like that if you had something else better to put in its place. And by golly, I do believe an avatar experience in that building is better than a DVC Lounge. They'll make it up to the DVC crew somewhere else. But yeah, I don't see any problem with them usurping that entire space. Not to mention, though, the DVC Lounge doesn't take up hardly any of that intervention space. I'm maybe a quarter, a fifth of that building. There's a lot of room for play in the interventions building for something like this. You can't build Tron in that space, but you can build an avatar experience in that space, and it would fit. I gotta say, it would fit perfectly in Tomorrowland. As for the rest of Tomorrowland, I think that there's more, but I don't have any other information besides that. Whatever else happens, though, it will not come at the expense of Space Mountain. Space Mountain will stay intact. In fact, any version of a new Tomorrowland has always said, Space Mountain, you can't touch Space Mountain. That will be there forever. I don't even think that Disney would go as far as replacing Space Mountain with whatever it is that they're doing. They wouldn't even do that. That's how sacred Space Mountain is to the Tomorrowland space, in my opinion. Can't say the same for Star Tours. Star Tours is not safe, nor is Buzz Lightyear. I believe that neither one of those attractions will exist in whatever winds up being new Tomorrowland. Then there's Autopia, and I'm personally happy to report that Autopia does appear to be making the cut into some future version of Tomorrowland. When that does happen, though, it will be electric vehicles. It would be madness to think that they would build something new, a new kind of Tomorrowland, and not make Autopia electric. In spite of the fact, though, that I am 100% certain that people will miss the noise they'll miss.
No, we won't.
Yeah, I won't. I won't miss the attraction if they got rid of it, to be honest. But the thing too is, like, a lot of people will come to this thing where, like, oh, leave Autopia and just make the cars electric. Okay, maybe like a decade ago that would be considered futuristic.
Disney's not going to do anything without it being moving forward without an IP attached to it, and there's no way that you can attach an IP to this.
Well, totally.
Without dismantling the whole thing and turning it to something completely different. Well,
that's a great point. And electric cars are not like they're not futuristic anymore. Like Tesla has really normalized that whole thing. It's every day now. I mean, everyone's got an electric car. At least out here in LA, they do. Everyone's got an electric car. It's not like this futuristic, like, wow, look at that. And you make a great point, George, about the IP. This is the other thing too. Genie Plus. You get rid of Autopia and you put a Pandora in here with an e-ticket, like a banger e-ticket, you're making that Genie Plus money way more than you would ever make on an Autopia. Mm-hmm. And because now you've monetized the whole Fast Pass thing, right? So you build something really special here with Pandora, really, A+ and e-ticket. You're making more money on it than you would letting this outdated thing sit here and take up all this acreage. I just don't see it happening, Dave. I'm sorry. I just don't. I think this thing is on borrowed time. I really do, but we'll see. We'll see. He might be right.
Right. Now, what I find interesting is how his wording of how he put it when he said, he's happy to say, as if it's confirmation that he got from somewhere, that this is for sure staying. The way he's putting it, it's not like as if he's saying it in his own thoughts and opinion. It's almost like he's putting it as if he has a reliable source that's giving him this, but I wonder how reliable the reliable source is when it comes.
You never know. Whenever you get a scoop or you get information from a source, you just never know. I have no idea who his sourcing is, and this person that he's getting information from could be absolutely correct. I don't know though. I would, for the reasons that we laid out, I just can't see it happening.
Oh, I don't either. And honestly, Disney can change their mind at the last second. I mean, they could say, "Oh yeah, we're definitely keeping this," and then then they'll change their mind. Even look at New Fantasyland. They had a whole entire princess meet and greet for Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, and it got changed within a short amount of time, and that area became what's now the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
Yeah, exactly. And Disney's going to want, especially Bob Iger, is going to want to justify that $70 billion price tag for Fox. And you do that by expanding this franchise into these parks and what have you, and significant expansions. You don't want to do these half-ass kind of things. You want to do something big. So I don't know. There's a lot more money-making potential here if you put an Avatar in there than leaving it Autopia. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
It's the sound of Autopia. And once we all realize how important that sound was, and now that we've got the silent attraction, I think you could actually wind up killing Autopia by making it electric. Check me on that in about 2030. I'll be standing by. Let's have that conversation in 7 years? And I'm not even joking, by the way. The whole allure, in my opinion, the reason why Autopia is still popular to the extent that it is today is the fact that it's the nostalgia of it. The fun of Autopia is based on the fact that it's loud and bumpy and hard to handle and kind of obnoxious. But you put in a fleet of quiet, safe, easy to handle ride vehicles, and I have to question whether or not it'll have the same appeal. Just wouldn't be the same anymore.
Well, now, I just have to just say, while he was talking, I jumped on the Disneyland app because I was just curious to see what the wait time is.
Right.
And right now it's currently at 25 minutes. I don't know, Dave. That doesn't really sound like a very popular ride to me that people are running to go ride this. And chances are 25 minutes, that's probably not even the accurate time.
I agree with you. And look, this is the thing too, is actually, I love Dave's passion for this ride. Like, it's so great because it's really kind of like, it's not like the most impressive thing, and he's all in on it. And that's cool. That's really, really cool.
It is really cool. Like, if I ever got to sit down with him in person, I'd just be like, just talk to me about Autopia. Like, let's just talk Autopia.
Hey, Dave, if we ever run into you at the parks, man, we'll have some beers. We'll talk Autopia. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I just think I appreciate anyone who has like a passion for something, who's like really into it. Cause that's what we are as nerds, right? Like, when nerds do that, we obsess and stuff over things that most people don't really obsess over.
And it really is a good conversational piece. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this right now had he not released the video. So it's like, it gets a conversation going.
Absolutely.
Not be the same. They would have to find a way to overcome, and I mean this, they would have to find a way to overcome the silence that would come out of that part of the park. It's in our DNA now, that sound. Anyway, that really only leaves one wild card, one remaining question about a future Tomorrowland. PeopleMover. Can Disneyland build a new Tomorrowland without a PeopleMover? Yes, they can. Or at least they will. My instinct tells me that they are simply unable to, and for reasons that we've discussed in the past, that the track, the PeopleMover track, is embedded into so much of the Tomorrowland infrastructure. It's embedded into Space Mountain, Star Tours, Buzz Lightyear, Innoventions. The tracks are part of those buildings. And I'm not certain that they could be made whole again, serviceable, usable again under modern building codes without doing irreparable damage to the existing buildings. You can't even take them out. You can't even remove the tracks without doing major damage to those structures.
See, I don't agree with that. I mean, none of us here are like construction experts, obviously, but like, I'm sure Disney can go in there and like, adjust those tunnels to meet current code, and they can do it. I mean, the tunnel's already there. Like, I mean, it's not, I understand some of the tunnels might be like being used for various things right now because it's been vacant for so long, but like to say that like, well, it's just impossible, they just can't do it. It's like, I don't know, Dave.
It's kind of like already there. I mean, it does probably need extensive work after all those years. But I mean, the foundation is there. I mean, they already have kind of like the blueprints of how they would maneuver to rebuild the PeopleMover if they really wanted to. Which I think that would be great. I think that would be a great Kickstarter for a newer Tomorrowland, and especially since that's something that a lot of locals are wanting that back. Just Disney fandom in general want that back, and I think that if they were to update a type of people mover where it may not be have how the original is or was, I should say, at Disneyland, I think just having a variation of that, I think guests would welcome it.
Yeah, no, me too. Absolutely. And like I said before, with like the Tron thing at Disneyland, I think as fans, we have to get away from this idea that things are impossible, right? Like within reason, obviously. I'm not like, but like this whole idea that like, well, they can't do it because they'd have to change the building. Come on, that's not a massive hurdle. You know what I'm saying? And with today's technology, they could figure that out. This whole idea that like, they can't build Tron because there's no space. Well, no, okay, you could change the layout. Like these are not major hurdles. We're not asking Disney, to put, an animatronic on Mars. Okay. This is fairly simple. I think it can be done if they want to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
If they want to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it is quite likely that those remnants of a greater tomorrow, if you will remain behind. Relics of a past that we all kind of miss and would love to see again. But unfortunately, I don't, I'm kind of okay with it. As I discussed this, as badly as I want the People Mover, it is perhaps my favorite attraction of all time. And I can say that having been on the Tomorrowland People Mover and not having hardly any memories at all at Disneyland. But I know, I know that I love the People Mover in the same way that I know that I love my wife and that I love my kids. But I'm at peace. I've said goodbye to that attraction so many times, in my heart that I'm okay. It's gone. It's done. It's not going to happen. The People Mover is just not going to happen. And the sooner we can accept that, I think we all just need to move on. And maybe when they build Tomorrowland, the new Tomorrowland in the future, that'll be enough to get people to move on. And when will that be, by the way? When will that be? Well, the rumor that I'm hearing is possibly as soon as 2028. I know that sounds very aggressive. It sounds very aggressive, but when you consider the fact that they're not building anything new, that they're not even tearing down anything, they're not even destroying, like let's say the Innovations building or the People Mover tracks. They're not building a Tron ride. They're not building anything new. 4 or 5 years sounds reasonable, actually. That sounds like enough time to get that done. They can build the Avatar experience and then update the rest of the park, update Autopia and all that, or the rest of the land. Update Autopia and whatever it is they're going to do to Star Tours and Buzz Lightyear, they could do that in 5 years, I think. And so if what I'm hearing that 2028 is the projected, that's the goal, that is in sync with the rumors that I've heard about what they are going to do. And it's not in sync, for example, of a complete makeover. You couldn't do a complete makeover in 10 or in 5 years. I think it would take 10 years to build a fully redone Tomorrowland. It would take 10 years. And you would have to close significant portions of the land, of Tomorrowland, while you're in that process. Perhaps all of it for a certain amount of time. You would have to shutter Tomorrowland. You'd be out of business for part of that period. And that, I'm afraid to say, that's just not on the table, you guys. That's just not on the table. You cannot close an entire land for 5 or 10 years.
Okay, so first I have to say, not just what he is talking about that would take 6 years, but it actually took 6 years to rechange Camp Mini Mickey into what is now Pandora. They made that announcement in 2011, and Pandora opened in 2017. So, it is doable that you can transform a whole entire land, and it take 5 to 6 years. Well, I don't really see it could take 10. No. But as him saying 2028, but they didn't even make any announcement yet. Normally, right. Disney, it's usually between 5 to 7 years after they make the announcement.
Right.
So
Well-
they didn't even make an announcement yet. And before you say your statement, OG, I actually have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you feel like there is enough in Disneyland currently right now where they actually could close down Tomorrowland and people would be just fine?
Oh, no, there's absolutely enough there that they can close down Tomorrowland. And here's the thing. There's a couple of instances. Number one, they shut down Tomorrowland to do the Tomorrowland 1998. That new Tomorrowland we have right now, they shut the land down. I believe either the whole thing or in pieces. I don't remember. But they redid it then. I don't know why you can't do that now. The new Fantasyland over in Magic Kingdom. I mean, they ripped that thing up and expanded and did all that. I mean, I don't understand this idea that like they can't shut this thing down, the whole land. It's like they've done it before though, Dave. New Fantasyland here in Anaheim in the 80s, they did that. So I think it's they could definitely do it. And you don't have to do the whole thing at once. You can do in phases, right? You can do maybe the back half towards Space Mountain first. You can tackle the other side over by the lagoon second. Then you can tackle the front of it last. You can do these in phases. You don't have to do the whole thing at once even. But to say that like, well, it's just too difficult. We can't shut the whole land down. You can absolutely do that. And Disneyland, to your point, George, has enough in that park to sustain that. I mean, you have so many e-tickets and attractions in Disneyland. They can shut down huge chunks of Tomorrowland and be absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. So,
and as we said many times, Tomorrowland is, compared to everything else in Disneyland, it's kind of on the weaker side of the park. So I think other than Space Mountain, that would probably be their only Achilles heel, so to speak. But just for that one attraction temporarily for guests to know, hey, you know what? Eventually, we're still going to keep Space Mountain, but we're going to get this whole entire Pandora experience, or we're going to get a whole re-theme of Tomorrowland with the PeopleMover and what have you. I don't really think guests would really have too much of a problem with it.
Yeah,
I really don't.
I don't either. 100%.
So I feel like, considering that this is perhaps a good compromise, if true. Sure, we're not getting everything we want. Sure, we're not getting the PeopleMover or Tron in Tomorrowland, although we're getting it somewhere else. But I feel like those possibilities are just so far out there, and they are not in sync with what is required in Tomorrowland, that this is the best possible, well, maybe not the best. It's a good compromise. We're getting a new experience, a new Avatar thing. We're getting possibly new attractions where Star Tours and Buzz Lightyear are. Hopefully something updated. You're getting electric vehicles, which everybody seems to be so eager for, but in reality, like I said, I think it's the opposite of what you're getting. There's unintended consequences of that decision. Stamp. I'm telling you, check me on 2030. Come. I'll be here. I'll be here in 7 years. I will be 60 years old, and I'll be talking about the old Autopia. Darn, do I miss that noisy gas-powered vehicle?
Well,
I just have to add something to Dave's comment, and unfortunately, Dave, I'm sorry. As I said, I love you, dude, but I hate to bust your bubble. You're not going to hear the sounds of the Autopia cars because they're turning electric. You're not going to hear the sounds anymore because the whole damn thing is going bye-bye. I'm sorry.
We'll see you in the queue for the new ride in Pandora in a few years. That's really what I think is going in there. I really think they're going to put Avatar in there. And hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. His sources are saying something totally different. I don't think what he's saying is enough for fans. A Band-Aid kind of essentially for Tomorrowland. I think fans want a new Tomorrowland, an actual new Tomorrowland. I don't think just throwing an Avatar thing in the launch bay, the stuff that he's surmising, like saying it's not enough. I think fans want a little bit more ambition here with this land. We've waited, like 20 years for this to happen, and we're going to get that. I'm sorry. I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed fans if they go the route that he's saying. But that's
kind of going backwards. If it is true what Iger is saying, that they're comparing it to the Pandora and Animal Kingdom, then why would you go backwards? Why would you create something as popular and breathtaking as what they have in Animal Kingdom, but then you're going to work your way backwards and create an exhibit experience in a building? Yeah, I don't. It just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry.
It's not ambitious enough, and I think that I think James Cameron is going to expect more, and I think fans are going to expect more out of Tomorrowland. So, yeah. And plus, I think you can monetize the Autopia land a lot better with Pandora. That Genie Plus money would be crazy, much better than anything Autopia could bring in. And it's an IP, so you got the merch thing too. So we'll see. We will absolutely see. But Citrus, George, hey, I didn't even know you're showing a little chest here today, huh?
I do. Yes, I got a. Yeah, I got a little.
like a true Italian.
Italiano. Forget about it.
Get about it. George, thank you so much, brother, for coming on, talking shop with me today. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Disney George. You could also check me out on the podcast, Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And I want to thank you, OG, for having me on. It was a great discussion, and a big shout out to Dave from Fresh Baked.
Yes.
Thanks for making the video. It was still very, very welcoming to watch and listen and to have a conversation about it. Because as OG had pointed out, that's what we nerds do.
That's what we do, man. That's what we do. And yeah, big shout out to Dave. I'm going to link the video, his video down below. Check it out. I would say subscribe, but if you're a Disney theme park guy watching or gal watching this show, I'm sure you're already subscribed to Dave. But if by chance you don't know who Dave is, which would be unlikely, but hey, you never know, definitely give him a subscribe. He is he's a friend of the channel. We like Dave a lot. Actually, you're friends with Liz. I'm
friends with Liz. Yeah, she's very sweet. You know, they both are, and and I, wish them all the best. Their endeavors, and of how Dave, puts his heart and soul into that channel that he literally created from the ground up, and his passion and his drive. As I just give it to him, and I give to content creators like that. Someone else who I know who created a little channel from the ground up, and look where we are now. So it's I love when you kind of have a content creator just kind of start from scratch and literally grow it into something special. It makes it all much more sweeter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, George, for coming on. And thank you all for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts about Dave's video, about Tomorrowland, Pandora, the Avatar experience, all that good stuff. We would love to hear from you in the comments down below. We're going to end it with my 3 favorite colors: black, pink, and orange.
Orange Grove 55.
It's the revolution.